Imagine you've been working for, I don't know, 14 hours straight.
Oh, brutal.
Right. You are completely drained. You sink into the couch,
Yeah.
struggling to keep your eyes open. Your battery is just entirely at zero.
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then your phone rings. You pick it up, and it's this piece of incredible life-changing news.
Like you got a major promotion or something.
Yes. Instantly, your heart rate spikes. You are off the couch, you're pacing the room, your eyes are wide, and you're just buzzing with electricity. But here's the thing. You haven't eaten a single calorie.
You haven't slept either.
Exactly. So, biologically speaking, where did that sudden surge of energy actually come from?
Well, it's a phenomenal question because, the standard Western model of biology really struggles to explain that without just reducing it to, like, a sudden chemical dump.
Like just a temporary adrenaline spike.
Right, exactly. But if we look at the source material we are unpacking today, that surge of energy isn't just some chemical trick. It is a massive, sudden intake of literal non-material fuel.
Welcome to the deep dive. We are thrilled you're here with us because today our mission is to unpack this really fascinating philosophical dialogue that kind of rewires how we understand human vitality.
It really does.
We're looking at a translated written exchange from March 2nd, 2008. It's between an inquiring student named Lifechanyuan Celestial and a teacher, or guide brother, named Shuofeng.
And the whole conversation revolves around the profound mechanical differences between two words we use all the time, which are spirit and consciousness.
And I think the contrast is striking because we use those terms so casually.
Oh, all the time. I mean, we'll say a sports team is full of spirit or
Yeah.
someone has good consciousness about a social issue.
Right, yeah. But Shuofeng doesn't do that. He provides this highly technical, almost architectural breakdown of what it actually means to be a living, energetic being.
Yeah, he essentially gives us an entire operating system for the human experience. But to get to consciousness, he first forces the student to completely dismantle the concept of spirit.
We can't even touch consciousness until we break spirit down into three foundational components, which are Jing, Qi, and Shen.
Right. He starts with a baseline definition. Spirit, Shuofeng states, is the collective overarching term for essence, ki, and spirit.
So Jing, Qi, and Shen.
Exactly. It's the comprehensive state manifested by a life form. It's the difference between, say, an 80-year-old who is vigorous and sharp and a 30-year-old who is chronically listless.
He also notes it can be the guiding principle of a thing, like grasping the spirit of a new law. But for living beings, it's that overarching state of vitality.
Which brings us back to your opening question about where that energy surge from a phone call comes from.
Right, so we have to look at the first component, which is Jing, or essence.
And Shuofeng categorizes Jing as a highly concentrated form of energy. It's the raw source that sustains all life activities. But he introduces a crucial duality here.
Right, the two distinct kinds of essence.
Yes. He says a living system relies on both material energy and non-material energy simultaneously.
Okay, let's unpack this for you listening, starting with material energy, since that aligns perfectly with our modern biological understanding.
Well, material essence is the energy refined directly from physical matter. Shuofeng specifically lists kidney essence, spleen essence, lung essence, and liver essence.
And we primarily get this through food and water, right?
Right, exactly. This is your caloric intake, your vitamins, the tangible building blocks your organs need to function daily.
But then he introduces non-material energy. He calls it heart essence and thought essence. And I have to push back a bit here,
Go for it.
because classifying good news as an actual sustaining energy source sounds kind of like putting a placebo effect on the same level as eating a meal. Isn't a mood boost just a temporary psychological state that eventually leaves you crashing?
I mean, it is entirely understandable to view it that way through a purely physical lens, but Shuofeng's framework argues that reality itself is composed of both material and non-material states.
So the body requires fuel from both realms to function optimally.
Exactly. Think about it. A piece of devastating news can exhaust you to the point where you literally can't stand up, even if you just ate a huge meal.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's incredibly true.
And conversely, incredible news can sustain your focus and physical drive for days with minimal food. The non-material input dictates the physical output.
Okay, I have an analogy for you listening to kind of separate these two fuels mechanically.
Yeah,
Think of your physical body as your smartphone.
I like where this is going.
Material Jing is the equivalent of physically plugging your phone into the wall outlet. You are actively feeding the battery measurable electrical power.
The physical input for the physical charge.
Right, exactly. But non-material Jing is like going into your phone's settings and forcing all those hidden background apps to close.
Oh, clearing out the bloated cache.
Yes. Suddenly, without ever plugging it into the wall, the phone runs flawlessly. The screen transitions are faster, the battery stops draining, the processor cools down.
You haven't introduced new physical voltage, but you've radically optimized its non-material operating state.
Right. That piece of good news clears your internal background apps, freeing up massive energy reserves you didn't know you had.
That is a perfect way to capture it. Both avenues give you a device with higher vitality, but they use completely different streams of essence.
But here's the thing. Having a full battery doesn't actually do anything if the internal circuitry is frayed. The energy has to actually move to be useful.
Which brings us directly to the second component in the triad, which is qi. Su Feng describes qi very clearly as the circulation state of this energy.
So is the flow.
Exactly. And it happens both within the life form and in the space immediately surrounding it. It is the distribution network.
And the metric for this is pretty straightforward, right?
Very. When the internal circulation is smooth and unhindered, your qi is considered abundant. But when it encounters roadblocks or friction, your qi becomes deficient.
So smooth circulation equals strong spirit, and blocked circulation equals poor spirit, regardless of how much raw Jing you have stored up. Back to our smartphone analogy. If Jing is the raw power, Qi is the smooth, uninterrupted flow of electricity across the microscopic circuits. You could have a battery charge to 100%, but if the wiring is damaged, the screen will still flicker and fail.
And we experience those obstructions constantly in real life. Stress, physical stagnation, emotional repression, they all act as localized blockages.
They stop the Jing from reaching the parts of the structure that desperately need it. But mechanically, a system with massive power and active currents is highly volatile.
Oh, absolutely.
If I have a giant battery and thousands of live wires,
Yep.
but absolutely no operating system directing where the voltage goes, the machine just catches fire.
Right, you need something managing the system.
There has to be a governing architecture, keeping everything from descending into pure chaos.
And that necessity introduces the third and really the most complex component of spirit, which is Shen.
Shen, right.
Yeah, Shen is often just translated as spirit, but here it plays a highly functional role. It is the life form's spiritual presence, acting as the literal administrator of its biological and energetic programs.
The administrator. This specific part of the text completely rewired how I view physical ailments.
How so?
Well, usually, if I eat a terrible greasy meal or push myself way too hard at the gym and I get a sharp pain in my stomach, I just view it as a biological glitch.
Like an enzyme failed or a muscle fiber tore.
Exactly. But Shufeng frames this pain as a literal confrontation with a governing spirit.
He really does, and it's a profound shift in perspective. He breaks Shen down into two distinct meanings. The first refers directly to these governing spirits managing the physical form.
So wait, according to this text, if I eat poorly or overwork myself, the resulting physical pain isn't just a biological glitch, it's actually me offending these governing spirits.
Yes, exactly. The text explicitly states that pain or discomfort is not merely a biological alarm bell. It means you have actively offended the governing spirit assigned to manage that specific region of your body.
You have violated the operating parameters they are tasked with maintaining.
Pain is literally a memo from an angry administrator whose department you just disrupted.
That is wild.
And to illustrate the sheer scale of this management system, Shuifeng shares a quote from a figure he calls a terrestrial immortal.
Oh, I want to read this quote for you listening because the scale is just hard to comprehend at first glance. The terrestrial immortal states, "Within my body are the spirit of radiant essence, the spirit of form and shadow, and the spirit of every pore, each numbering 12,000.
It's a staggering number.
It really is. The quote goes on to say, "The 5 Zhang organs, the 6 Fu organs, the 3 origins, and the 9 palaces all have their own spirits."
Right, and the initial reaction to hearing about 12,000 spirits per pore is to just assume it's ancient supernatural poetry.
Right, just a metaphor.
But if we analyze the function being described, we are looking at an absolute granular level of decentralized administration. We are not talking about a single overarching ghost running the machine.
Stripping away the supernatural baggage we usually attach to the word spirit, it sounds remarkably like a massive, multinational corporate hierarchy.
That is an incredibly useful way to visualize it.
You don't just have one CEO running a global supply chain. You have regional directors, division heads, all the way down to the individual employee whose sole responsibility is managing a single storage closet.
Right. The text mentions the Zhang and Fu organs, which in traditional Chinese medicine correspond to the solid and hollow organs. It also mentions esoteric energetic maps like the three origins and nine palaces.
If every system is covered.
Every single process, down to microscopic cellular respiration in a single pore on your arm, has an assigned manager. So when you get a paper cut or indigestion, you aren't just experiencing a chemical reaction.
You're dealing with a localized labor strike.
Exactly. It makes the body feel so populated, so teeming with intention, rather than just blind mechanics. And that's the first meaning of Shen.
But there's a second meaning mentioned as well, right?
Yes. The second meaning steps outside the localized management of the body and refers to the overarching spiritual being itself, the soul's spirit. According to the philosophy of Lifechanyuan, which is the broader framework here, this overarching spirit is referred to as the greatest creator.
And just to pause here for you listening, as we navigate these profound concepts, our goal is always to impartially report on the framework presented in the source material.
Right, we are just exploring its internal logic, not endorsing any specific theological view.
Exactly. We're looking at both the structural and energetic ideas impartially. So if we synthesize this deconstruction of spirit, we have Jing, the material and non-material fuel.
We have Qi, the smooth distribution network of that fuel.
We have Shen, the tens of thousands of governing administrators managing the daily operations.
That entire triad comprehensively covers the energetic state of a life form.
But this brings us to a massive turning point in the conversation. And honestly, a huge logical gap we need to cross. We have this sprawling multinational corporation of spirits running the physical plant, fueled by Jing and distributed by Qi. But who is writing the corporate policy?
Who determined the overarching design that these middle managers are trying to maintain?
Right, because the text makes a massive pivot here to address the second half of the student's question, which is the realm of consciousness.
This is where Xu Feng transitions from energetic management to structural architecture. He states definitively that consciousness is the product of structure.
The product of structure.
Yes. Whatever specific kind of structure exists internally will naturally give rise to a corresponding kind of consciousness. But he emphasizes that this is not a one-way street.
It's a loop.
Yes, in a continuous dynamic feedback loop, consciousness simultaneously acts upon and shapes the structure in return.
But mechanically, how does that actually work? Because the text says, when the soul is beautiful, consciousness becomes refined, which makes the structure harmonious. That sounds lovely, but it feels a bit abstract.
It does sound a bit poetic at first.
How does an invisible abstract thought actively rewrite a physical or energetic structure? Walk me through how consciousness is actually formed in real time.
To understand the mechanism, we have to look at the inputs. The text explains that consciousness is driven primarily by the motivating force of the soul.
So the soul acts as the engine of intent.
Exactly. From there, consciousness is formed by receiving stimuli and information from both material and non-material worlds.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the text lists the ways we receive these stimuli. It lists sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, the standard 5 physical senses.
The biological tools to process the material world.
Right, but then Zhefeng explicitly adds a 6th necessary input, which is spiritual perception.
Which is absolutely essential for this framework to function. Earlier, we established that reality is composed of both material and non-material energy. So, spiritual perception is the sensory organ required to process the non-material world.
It's the antenna for non-material Jing. It is how you perceive that good news as a tangible surge of energy. Or, how you can walk into a completely silent room and instantly sense that the two people inside were just in a screaming argument.
Yes, there are no physical cues, but your spiritual perception picks up the chaotic structural energy in the room. But receiving the signal is only the first step. The critical mechanism is what happens next.
Right, because if I just read this casually, I might assume consciousness is just a passive receiver, like a satellite dish just blindly taking in the 5 senses plus spiritual perception and doing nothing with them.
But Xu Feng insists that consciousness is an active psychological activity.
The defining element is thought.
Exactly. The text explicitly states consciousness is a form of psychological activity, and its formation is chiefly the result of thinking. The brain must actively process, categorize, and respond to all these stimuli through focused thought.
So it is the thinking about the stimuli that does the actual structural engineering.
That is the exact mechanism.
If I take in chaotic stimuli, say, staring at a highly stressful, inflammatory news feed for 3 hours, my physical eyes and my spiritual perception drag that non-material data into my brain.
And then your mind has to process it.
Right, and that active thinking literally writes new chaotic code into my overall structure. I am actively building a stressed, unrefined architecture.
You are feeding the feedback loop. The chaotic input forces chaotic thought, which degrades the structure, which in turn produces a more degraded consciousness, which then seeks out more chaotic inputs.
Wow. And conversely, if you expose yourself to profound beauty, complex ideas, or deep compassion, your active thought processes those inputs to build a highly refined, harmonious structure. If that continuous architectural feedback loop is happening every second of the day, it raises the ultimate question of the text. We have spirit, our vast energetic state of fuel, flow, and administration, and we have consciousness, our structural, psychological feedback loop.
So how do these two forces actually balance out?
Yeah, exactly.
Suefeng delivers his grand synthesis for the student by drawing a very clear defining line between the two. Spirit, he concludes, primarily reflects the sheer energetic state of a life-form structure.
And consciousness.
Consciousness primarily reflects the inner content and the qualitative nature of that structure.
Sheer energy versus inner quality.
Precisely. And because of this distinction, he points out a crucial, non-negotiable asymmetry in human development. They are not an equal reciprocal equation.
Meaning what, exactly?
The text states that a highly developed, refined consciousness generally gives rise to a strong, abundant spirit. If your inner structure is beautiful and harmonious, your energetic state, your Jing, Qi, and Shen will naturally flow abundantly.
You optimize the software so the hardware runs perfectly.
But having a massive, strong spirit does not necessarily mean that your consciousness is well developed.
I love this asymmetry because it explains so much of human behavior. Let me synthesize this relationship for you listening with a final analogy.
Yeah.
Think of the dynamic between spirit and consciousness like a massive, high-end public address system at a concert.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Spirit, the combination of Jing, Qi, and Shen, is the wattage. It is the raw power, the amplifiers, the sheer driving force pushing the sound through the speakers. A strong spirit means you have incredible volume. You have the capacity to shake the concrete.
But consciousness is the actual sheet music.
Yes. It is the composition being played, the inner content of the audio file. If your consciousness is unrefined, ugly, or structurally chaotic, having a massive spirit doesn't make you a better person. It just means you are blasting terrible, destructive noise at a deafening volume for everyone around you to deal with.
It is a sobering realization. We all know people in our lives or in history who possess boundless, terrifying, energy-massive spirit, but their inner structure is deeply flawed.
True harmony, according to this framework, requires both elements working in tandem. You need the pristine, highly refined composition of a beautiful consciousness, and you need the driving, abundant power of a strong spirit to actualize it in the world.
Absolutely.
So as we trace the journey of this deep dive, we started by throwing out the simple mechanical view of the human body as just a car engine needing gas. We dismantled spirit, discovering that our fuel, our Jing, isn't just the food on our plate, but the non-material thoughts, emotions, and good news we consume.
We explored Qi, the essential distribution network that must remain unobstructed.
We then ventured into the astonishing granular management system of Shen, reframing physical pain not as a random biological failure, but as an urgent memo from one of tens of thousands of governing spirits.
And from there, we crossed over from energy to architecture, defining consciousness as an active psychological feedback loop. We explored how it is driven by the soul, utilizing physical senses and spiritual perception.
Constantly rebuilding our internal structure through the active process of thought.
For you listening, applying this framework to your daily life offers a deeply nuanced diagnostic tool. The next time you feel exhausted, completely unaligned, or just off, you don't have to settle for just saying, I'm tired.
You can ask yourself highly specific questions. Are you lacking material Jing because of poor diet? Or are you desperately lacking non-material Jing? When was the last time you experienced genuine joy or received good news?
Is your Qi obstructed because you've been physically stagnant and emotionally repressed? Are you offending the governing spirits of your digestion by eating erratically?
Or perhaps most importantly, is the issue deeper? Is it a structural flaw in your consciousness?
Are you feeding your mind chaotic stimuli that is actively writing destructive code into your structure?
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. Something to mull over as you navigate the rest of your week. building on the mechanics Shifeng has laid out for us. If our consciousness is shaped by our structure, and our structure is literally engineered by the thoughts we have about the stimuli we take in, think deeply about the non-material energy you are actively choosing to consume.
Every endless scroll on a social feed, every cynical conversation you engage in.
Every piece of media you absorb, these aren't just passing moments in time. According to this framework, they are tangible building materials.
That's a powerful way to look at it.
Are you passively letting the chaotic, unrefined noise of the world construct your internal architecture? Or are you fiercely and carefully curating your inputs, designing your non-material energy to elevate your consciousness and build a structure that is actually worth broadcasting at top volume?
Such an important question to ask ourselves.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of vitality. We hope it provided you with a vital surge of non-material essence for your day. Take excellent care of your governing spirits, and we will catch you next time.